There was another productivity, this is what I was referencing as well, that it showed there was a 15% increase in the inpatient and a 10% increase in outpatient. That was when they first did the survey, and then when they wrote the article, it actually had increased to 12% in productivity. So I thought that was interesting. Some of the capabilities, and I don't know if this was unique to my facility, but our EHR, we were hybrid. And the EHR that we had, even though my coders were remote, I or my supervisor had to get on and assign to all their work queues. So that was something definitely I was keeping in mind when I was looking at a CAC. I wanted to depict out every bit that was going to save either my staff or myself time, and that was going to relate to money for my CFO, so that all of that they're doing is just really focusing on coding. So that's one piece. Us just not having to do all the assignments was really a gimme for that, because it's all automated, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Increased, of course, productivity, performance, and decrease your backlogs. Impact the rev cycle, of course, because we're going to have those charts being expedited quicker, so that's a gimme. Reduce or eliminate your dependency on outsourcing. No, I'm on the other end now, so I'm not sure I should leave that line item in. But I think next year everybody's going to be needing every little bit of help they can get. So I wouldn't take that out right now. Support clinical documentation improvement. That was huge for me. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in depth as I go through my presentation. But we had just implemented a CDI team, and it was very, very cumbersome. So I was trying to see what I could do to really expedite that entire process. So that was something that you want to keep in mind with your CDI, and then provide benefits even you don't have a full. Again, we were hybrid, so I had to look at something that was going to work with the hybrid system. Some of the productivity and consistency benefits, and again, some of these are just common sense, but I found this to be very interesting as I was going through some of these and I was thinking through this. Of course, you're generating all the same codes all the same time, right? So you're not going to have any variables in there. If every time you want that whatever to be picked up on one chart, it's going to be picked up on every chart, your history of whatever, right? Because right now we know there's probably inconsistencies. I can tell you pretty much everywhere I've coded, there's been inconsistencies because everybody was trained separately, which really leads into some of the other ones, and I'm not going to read this word for word because you have access to the slides. But one of the big variables we found that I thought was very interesting, because I've coded for so long, I could sit in a side by side with my supervisor, and I trained years and years, many years ago, and we basically coded for the DRG optimization. That's really who trained me. That's the way we did it. Now, of course, if there was a history of cancer, or you had some of your normal ones, if it was a history of a heart attack, we picked those up. But I wasn't a big having to have all those. If it was a hyperlipidemia and I missed it, even though they were getting meds, it wasn't the end of the world. In my quality, when we were doing quality reviews. So all those little, things really came to me when I was working with my supervisor at a site, and she had like 25 codes on one chart because she was trained to pick up everything. So, we went back and I really made some changes in my coding. Of course, if it was evaluated, managed, or treated, you should pick it up, which is true. But I did notice that all my coders, even though I had internal guidelines, all my coders were coding differently. So it really went back to how they were trained. I mean, it wasn't major things on quality reviews, but it really went back to how they were trained and what they were taught. This eliminates it. Everybody gets hyperlipidemia, if they see it and if it's treated, evaluated, or managed. But so everything's picked up on every chart consistently. I think that was a real big bonus for us. Especially even though I wasn't really working on this presentation for I-10, it was something to keep in mind for I-10. The other piece that I thought was, and again, being a coder, there are some human errors that occur, right? We have to admit it. Even though you've coded forever and a day, and a coder never wants to admit that they're wrong, and they'll fight you to the death, and mine did that. There are are human errors that occur. So definitely keep that in mind. I wanted to move on real quick to this one. Oh, let me go back real quick. I wanted to go back to the Cleveland Clinic article that came out because I thought this was real interesting. They did a survey. Did anybody see that, by the way? I don't. Oh, okay, that was cool. They did an actual where they had 12 coders. 6 of them utilized the CAC. 6 of them did not utilize the CAC. So right away in the article, it'll tell you they definitely saw the productivity enhancement. You know, that it was definitely increased productivity. What I found was very interesting was that there was variables, not just by coders that coded and then somebody else coded it, but after they recoded it themselves, there was a difference within 6 months. I thought that was interesting. I'm not sure that I would code a chart differently in 6 months if I coded it today, but they were very clear in that. So again, a lot of variables. So this takes out all of that for you, and it really makes sure that you have that consistency, which I think is nice, and was definitely going to be a positive. Some of the other positive impacts, of course, is the automating the workflow. To me, that was really important, as I stated, because we had to assign to their queues. The other item we had was concurrent DRGs, and I don't know if this was really relative to everybody or if this was just my facility, because I don't remember doing this at other facilities that I had managed. But we had to consistently, at the end of each month, have a working DRG, which was just extra coding for one of my coders for specific patients that were in the house. Maybe they were trachs, they wanted to try to figure out financially how that was going to impact us, so we were doing this work in DRG. The other piece so having a working DRG for any reason, I think was just a plus. Now, getting back to our CDI team, they were physicians. We were a little unique in the way we set up our CDI. So it was physicians going to the floors after we taught them what a DRG was and we taught them what CCs and MCCs were. They literally went to the floors and looked at the charts. And then they would come down and they would look to see, you know, if there was an acute rest failure opposed to your COPD, you know, which one could you use? And they worked with us. But this would automatically give your CDI team, because everybody has access to it, and again, it's based on that information going in, they can go up the day after and have an immediate working DRG. So I thought that was definitely huge. Recovery submission, the CAC has a really cool piece to it at the end that we coded. Does everybody code without your discharge summaries? Yeah, mostly everybody does now because you have to get the bills out. Or without all the consults in there, you know, and you're just thinking, oh, they're not going to put anything in there that I'm sure I didn't miss because I am the coder. And but what this resubmission does is that after you've closed that, and even if you send it to billing, if a new document comes in, it will alert the coder. So that may or may not impact your revenue, but I just thought that was, you know, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you don't know if you're missing anything at the end. Who goes back and checks all them unless you get audited? So that's a really cool function that we had on there. And then problem list, when I was looking quite a few years back, of course, we were really talking about meaningful use, and doctors wanted all these lists, and so that was a definite possibility as well.